I've got a classic for you today. Yep. After over 30 years, Tomb Tape 3 is finally making it to the public eye. And Tomb Tape 3 was first cut in August of 1994. And about late September, early October, I added an intro, a lengthy intro, which you will see, concerning different embassies that I was sending the VHS tape to in Washington, D.C. And the follow-up, these people were just absolutely amazed. And I added also at the end of the second rendition of Tomb Tape 3, several more decipherments. Not all the lengthy letter by letter, word for word, but just the overall decipherment. And then in 16, a fellow, I can't even remember what his name was, down in Paducah, took on the task of transferring the VHS to a formidable DVD format. And that's what that would have been. And he cleaned it up somewhat, added a couple of things, cleaned it up. And so that would have been the third rendition of Tomb Tape 3. And now I have cleaned it up even more. I mean, it had some chair noise in it, a lot of dead spots. And there were a couple of misspeaks in there that both Paul and I made that Paul wasn't happy with. And like he said, we only made it for two people, Russ Burrows and the landowner. We didn't really care about anything other than that. But it's been polished. So what you're about to see is, I guess, the fourth rendition of Tomb Tape 3. And here you're going to see the brilliancy of Paul Kelly Shafranca. His knowledge in ancient languages and ancient history is unsurpassed. The guy's so gifted and just absolutely one of the most brilliant minds in the world. And it really shows in this video. He really stays on track, and we go from subject, topic, back and forth, and a lot of first time letter by letter, word for word decipherments. And to this day, no one has challenged any of his decipherments to any degree whatsoever. And speaking of my longtime friend and colleague, Paul, he is not doing well at all down in Gulfport. He was taken back to the hospital for surgery, and he was there for like a week and a half, and now he's back in Gulfport Driftwood Nursing Home. And I'm trying to put together things that are going to stimulate his mind, maybe get him an iPad or something like that. I'm not sure. But just to let you know, he needs your prayers. He needs all our prayers. And if you live down in lower Mississippi, maybe you could go by and see him sometime, or lower Alabama. So anyway, this is long, and it will have an outro to it also. And it's not so, it's enjoyable to watch. I mean, I've watched it again, and it's very good, very good. And this was our first Tomb Tape, actually. And it became Tomb Tape 3 because we did a take, and then we shot it on, we tried it on some people, and then we added more to it. And then we did the second Tomb Tape, and we answered more of our own questions. And then by Tomb Tape 3, we had answered what we thought were our most pending questions with that. So check it out. It still holds its own today, and it's awesome. It was earth-shattering then, and you'll be able to see too, because with the first Tomb Tape 3, we of course had no pictures of artifacts. We only had the books. And then I featured in the second rendition 2 letters, one from Cyclone Covey and one from Dr. Shears. So let's check it out. That's how it begins. Thank you.
The following presentation is true. This is not a joke or a bad dream. This video is the most important historical information concerning antiquities from your country that you will ever see. This video will deal exclusively with a place that has become known as the Burrows Cave. The story goes that in 1982, a cave explorer named Russell Burrows was wandering around in southern Illinois when he found this cave. He took many artifacts from the cave in an attempt to find out who was buried there. Several scholars called him a fraud because they could not decipher the script. There are literally thousands of tablets now lost and scattered all over North America. You are being alerted because the antiquities from this cave contain historical documents important to you and your country. There have been several books printed over recent years concerning this cave. Since no one could ever decipher the script, there was still no knowledge of who was buried there. Now that the script has been deciphered, we have full knowledge of the tomb and the people buried in it. We have been accepted by top professors in their field as scholars with an accurate decipherment. Dr. Covey, Senior Professor of History at Wake Forest University, writes that he is going to write us a letter endorsing our breakthroughs. And he still believed that we should be first to demonstrate our deciphering process, which strikes him as flawless. Professor James P. Sheartz of the University of Wisconsin at Madison writes, once the news bang is over and we have the photos from the inside of the cave and your material out to all the world, then it will be a different world. Look at that layout of Burrows Cave, the mystery cave of many faces. But actually what we have here is a mystery cave of many dead bodies. There are 12 crypts featuring one featuring a woman with 2 smaller children, and a main crypt. Now, in analyzing the Burrows Cave artifacts, the questions that come to mind is, who is this in this burial crypt? Where did they come from? How did they get here? Why are they here? And what time frame it was. Now we're going to look at some of the artifacts, and we're going to go through step by step, starting out with some of the more animated tablets and moving into other more important tablets and deciphering script and explaining how script is deciphered.
One thing we notice from the burial crypt of the first man he saw is that this king, this person of importance, is buried on a stone bed. Here we have the side view with the skeleton on top, and over here to the right we have like an aerial view of what this person looks like. A complete skeleton lying on a stone bed, a tablet describing who this person is, and it appears that he's wearing a type of an Egyptian uraeus hat. It's very significant, this type of burial on a stone bed. It is very significant for a culture of people that they buried their kings that way, as we will see later. Over here, one of the artifacts. This shows a lion. When I'm looking through many of the artifacts, I notice there is an abundance of lions. They look like the African lion, which is not native to North America. The lion has a specific significance to a group of people. Here we see another face of a lion. Clearly shows his mane and his face. And on the reverse of this rock, we see the symbol of the sun, and we start to see some script. Now these two characters here are seen throughout the entire Burrows Cave. This particular name on this script signifies an extremely important person who is responsible for the entire cave. This particular stone, let us go back to the lion. The symbolism in this stone is that the ancestry from where these people came from, they dated their ancestry back to the symbol of the lion. And in the bottom reverse, they also dated it back to the sun. They have a hereditary ancestry in a lion and a divine ancestry with the sun. Here's another stone with the same script showing the sun. On the reverse of the stone, you see this person. Looks like a monarch of some type, and he has the sun above him, which signifies that he is blessed by the sun. And as on the reverse, we have seen another symbol of the sun with the name on it, the name that is seen throughout the entire Burrows cave.
Okay, is there any significance to or a coincidence in the fact that there are lions associated with a body buried on the stone slab in this fashion?
From what I've seen before in other excavations and in history, the burial of kings on stone beds and the lion as a symbol of a nation resembles the Macedonian dynasty.
About what time period?
It dates to the time period of about 300 BC, the time of Philip the Great and his son Alexander, and also the successors. The Macedonians buried their dead on stone beds, and they also added their weaponry with them in their tombs. But this is just looking at the pictures and symbolism. The truth comes out when we decipher the script and actually read what the rocks have to tell us.
Okay, before we go any further, we just want to show the ancient texts and scripts, some of them that we have here at our disposal in the Lazeria Library. All of these are alphabets out of legitimate books, most of them published in either 1800s or early 1900s. This is what we have at our disposal. And what we used to decipher some of the script from the Burrows cave. Altogether here we have well over 120 alphabets. And now I'd like to ask you, Paul, can you explain to us what languages that you are fluent in and what you study?
I'm fluent in German and Spanish. I was educated and grew up in Austria. I also studied the Russian language, and I'm currently in ancient languages. I've done a lot of work in the Phoenician Aramaic, the Latin, the Greek, some Hebrew, and before we got into this project, I was actually working on the Mayan, Nahuatl, Yucatec languages, as well as attempting to decipher the Mayan glyphs, which have not yet been deciphered to this day. But you got me steered off course, and I'm involved with this project right now.
All right, and let's reiterate again, you are fluent in ancient Latin,
Yes.
in grammar, speech, written,
Yes.
the whole 9 yards, syntax, way the sentences are constructed,
Yes.
the whole 9 yards.
I have every bit of information. That's what I studied when I was in Austria. I had 4 years of Latin drilled into me, and many other languages I studied on my own.
I want to point out that Latin grammar is important in deciphering certain ancient scripts. And now we're going to look at some more scripting. Now what we're looking at is a stone from the Burrows cave, and you will notice that there are certain letters that come to light that are actually easy to identify, such as the F's and the G's. We have the several consonant blends, and we also have something peculiar for this day and age, is vowels. And of course, over a little bit, we see the name. We see our hero again right there. All right. And now let's get a little bit more background on this stone.
looking at the script at the Burrows cave, and the last stone especially, I determined that the alphabet used is an Aryan alphabet of the Phoenician origin. Now, it is not like the Semitic Phoenician, which is entirely consonantal, but we have noticed that there on the stone there is a large frequency of vowels in there. And also we start seeing a more modern letter as the backward F. Let's look over here. This particular chart, we start seeing the backward F, and also a G we saw on the other stone. The closest thing that resembles that type of script and that time period is exactly a Chalcidic form of script, which was used in Greece, and also a script known as the Etruscan, Umbrian, Oscan, Felician, and Latin, which was used in Italy at the time of the Roman Empire, and also during the couple centuries before. Now right here we clearly have a chart of the Italian scripts, which a lot of these letters are prevalent on the Burrows cave artifacts. You see a multitude of vowels, you see the backward F, you see the G, you see more modern letters, a few of them that do appear on the artifacts. And notice over here, Latin. This is how the Latin developed. These are the more older letters. Now what I concluded by looking at this is that the language on those stones has to be either a form of Greek or Latin. Now naturally, the language at that time was a spoken language, and therefore it doesn't rhyme and sound exactly like the church Latin we see today. Now a lot of scholars would disagree with me immediately, but this is from a book from the 1800s that shows the various forms of the Roman alphabet. It is relatively rare to find something like that today. And it's also identical to what my grandfather has done work on the Etruscan language, which basically I am continuing, and the Burrows cave completes that work. Now, if a lot of scholars say, well, we have ancient coins that are readable in Latin, well, let's take a look at some of these coins here.
Here we see some basic European Roman coins that are said to be ancient coins. And the most surprising thing is that all of these coins are in mint condition, and they all have a type of Latin that is totally readable.
Church Latin.
A church Latin. And it appears that this church Latin actually came into being around the 1400s. Let's go back and look at some more script for just a second. Here we're looking at a Phoenician alphabet. Now, the Phoenician alphabet was the predecessor to the Chalcidic, the Etruscan, and the different Latino dialects. And the mystery of why we feel that there's been such a problem deciphering the script from the Burrows cave, or why it was accused of being fraudulated, is because that the Burrows cave has interjected vowels. And thereby, when vowels have been interjected, the grammar is completely different, thereby creating a completely new syntax. And the syntax and the grammar must go or come from or to another language. And now we're going to look at what language that developed into. Okay, once again, we're going to look at some more tablets taken from the Burrows cave. And here we have a tablet that has script over towards the right. What do we have here?
Right, here we have one of the gold medallions, and by beginning on deciphering the script, I decided to target on this character here with the two letters what his name is, because he appears in many artifacts of the Burrows cave. Now, using the alphabets that we have shown before, let us go to the top left-hand corner of the board where I have written it down. Makes it a lot easier to see. And we start seeing some lettering here. At the top here, we see a more modern variation of a lowercase Greek omega. Now, there is some Greek on some of the artifacts on the Burrows cave, but not very many as I've seen yet. Now, this part here reads from right to left. And then you have this letter and that letter going down. Now, this here is a lowercase Greek omega, and it translates sound like to O. These two are an Etruscan letter which sound like he. This is very similar to a lambda, but this particular one is pronounced as li. This is like today an o, and this is pronounced as an s. But there are different types of s's in the script, but this particular one that looks like an x is used when a word as s ends. When s is the ending of a word. They had very particular rules, I've noticed, to make it easier to distinguish one word of the other. Let's read it. Reading it like this, it reads down, O Helios, which writing it normally reads O Helios, which is actually a Greek vocative case where this particular god in the bottom is calling O Helios, which in Greek means the sun. In modern Greek it is said Oliose, but what this god in the bottom here is calling is O sun, but he is not referring to the sun as we see outside every day. He is referring to a person known as the sun. Now let's take a look at the medallion again. This particular creature here is the Egyptian god Sutek. He is a death god, and he calls on the living to join his kingdom of death, or he performs a ritual on someone that is already dead. So he is calling O Helios, O sun, wanting a sun king to join his kingdom. What we have here is a sun king. Let's take a look at other stones with this Helios on it. Let's go back to the lion here. Like I said before, this race of people traces their ancestry back to the lion, their hereditary ancestry, and their divine ancestry back to the sun. Now here we have the name Helios again, the sun. He traces his ancestry of hereditary back to the lion of Macedonia, and he traces his divine ancestry back to the sun. Let's look at another piece. Here we have again a picture of suns and an Helios on there. We have a sun king.
Okay, now we look at another stone tablet from the Burrows cave. And as so often the case throughout the Burrows cave, there'll be a man's head, and his name will be carved underneath the head or somewhere on the face of the stone where his head exists. And right now we're going to find out who Helios is.
On the reverse of the stone we have a bunch of script which describes this Helios. This is an extremely important recovery from the cave because it will give you exactly who this person was, what he was, and from what dynasty he came from. Over to the left I have copied as best as I can the script that is on the stone, and looking at it, it is clearly the Etruscan script, the Etruscan. Here we have the backward F again, and we have numerous letters that are characteristic of the Etruscan script. Now, this particular script is written, the words are spaced very conveniently, which is really nice for this script, and it's written from right to left. For convenience sake, I have switched over the letters to how we would read them. Now let me give you a decipherment letter by letter of what it says. This here, written like a right triangle, is pronounced as a de. This letter here is a combination of a P and a T. It is pronounced pta. Down here, we have what looks like a Y that is pronounced like IU, U. Here we have an R, R. Here we have U, T, R. Here we have U again. This letter is a G, and here we have E is ending. The cross-like symbol is et. Here we have pta again, R, U. Here we have the F, and it's pronounced like Effe. Here we have G again, U, et, is. Down here we have pata. Equilateral triangle is written as a le. Now we saw the open one, the li and the elios. The closed one is like a le. Equilateral triangle. Right triangles are di. Equilateral triangles are le. Here we have gi, ti, is. Now reading this, it reads in the Latin language, a form of ancient Latin. Now I've written all the letters down. Now making it readable into what I call Church Latin. Over to the right, it reads, Deputo jure Jupiter jugis et patriu efficetis tole cryptis. Now what does this translate to into English? Now in English, this translates to from the Latin as that this Elios on the reverse is depicted as sworn by Jupiter to belong and represent his forefathers, the Ptolemies of Egypt. We are looking at a descendant of the Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt, one that is a member of the dynasty and is carrying on his dynasty. Looking at the bottom line, where else do we see this series of letter, this script? We find it with another stone from the Burrows cave. Here we have the same sequence of letters. T, le, but here we have an a. Here we go gi, tis. Now the only difference is this a letter right here. Let's take a closer look at the script here and let's go and translate it. Now let's translate. To le a gip tis. Let's go to the right. We read, Tole a giptis. Now what does this a mean? Well, in the Greek and the Latin, the ordinal order of a founder would be given by the characterization of the letter of the alphabet. Remember in the Bible where Christ says, I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am beginning and I am the end. The Alpha is the beginning letter of the alphabet, the A. So therefore, this particular Ptolemy is the founder of that dynasty, and it is Ptolemy the first of Egypt. So we have a picture in one of the Burrows cave stones of Ptolemy the first of Egypt, and we also have a description of his descendant known as Elios. Here's another stone from the Burrows cave. I would like to point out the diverse cultural aspects of the artifacts in the cave. We have first shown the Ptolemies of Egypt. We have shown a Latin script. Now we have shown also the king buried on a marble bed, a stone bed, which is a Macedonian trait. Now let's go to another culture that is in the Burrows cave. Let's take a look at this man right here. Below here, I detected that some script was inscribed, very faded, as a two letters, U and what looks like a square here, diamond type square. Let's go up here where I wrote it down. Gives the name of this person. Translated as Yuba. Now we will see this again. This is a very significant and very important personage, and is also a famous person in history. Let's look at his head again. Let's get very close and look at his helmet. We can see he has the flaps, and here he wears what appears to be like a turban type spike. This particular headdress and helmet was very prominent with the Numidian, Mauritanian, a tribe of people called the Garamantes that live in Morocco. It was part of the kingdom of Numidia and Mauritania, which is today's Morocco. This is a type of headgear, a North African headgear with a monarch here named Yuba. Here we have another sign of North African Mauritanian helmet. This is person here. In the back, he is depicted as Helios. Helios is wearing North African Mauritanian headgear. And naturally, the sun is always with him because he is the Sun King. Here we clearly see a Caucasian wearing a ancient Greek style helmet. Here we have another person with his name, and he is wearing what clearly is a Roman style helmet. I have many diagrams of different helmets, and this is one of the types that completely covers the ear and the head, and these are like flaps for decoration. Some of them survive that just have this part right here without the decoration, but it's clearly a Roman helmet. Now, let's take a look at the script over here. It's just 3 letters. It gives the name of this person. This letter here is pronounced as Ka. It looks like the modern K. This is the E's, and this is an R. So this spells as Kaiser, or Caesar, which is exactly like you would say Caesar today. Shows a Roman with a Roman headdress by the name of Caesar. Where else do we see these 3 letters? Now we get the Barry Fells book, America, BC. This is a stone found by Gloria Farley in Oklahoma, which Barry Feld translated as an awakening stone, meaning awaken, and some type of trash written on it. But we can see the same letters as we saw with the man before. Now he translated it as Chief Raz, which Jack Ward really elaborated on. That's where I guess the whole story started. But over here we can clearly see the same 3 letters we saw from the stone of the Burrows cave. Here we have the Kaiser, Caesar, and down here we have a Libyanic North African script. Now Barry Fell had this top letter correct, which is an R. But here he spelled this letter as an S, coming up with the name Chief Raz, awake. Actually, this lettering here in Libyan is identical to this Caesar, Kaiser, except that this letter down here is not pronounced as a sole S, but it's pronounced as a type of double S with a guttural that is actually pronounced Haisab, which is exactly what the Numidians and Mauritanians, as well as the Arabs today, would say Caesar, Haisar. So what we have is a stone inscription commemorating Caesar. And this is a mark we see in a lot of parts of the Burrows cave. A mark of respect. Now here we show another Egyptian male with his Uraeus type headdress, and he appears to be a Caucasian looking man. Now here we look at what appears to be a native North American Indian. He resembles an Algonquin. But the strange thing I find is on some artifacts that I have seen, as the Phaistos disc of Crete, there are little symbols showing people with this type of headdress. Could it be possible that there might have been a people from Crete, or some islands, maybe the Balearic Islands or Rhodes, who were specialized in archery and slingers, that wore this type of a mohawk hairdo, and that the natives over here copied that from them? We do not know whether this is exactly a Native American or it is actually a Mediterranean personage, which later on our Native American Indians copied. Here we see a bust of a man wearing an Egyptian Uraeus headdress. But he clearly has certain characteristic features, such as a large aquiline nose, dimples, big ear, big forehead, and a very stern military look. This type of sculpture is very classical Roman. This person here with the aquiline nose and the dimple is a Roman. Now the fact that he's wearing this Egyptian crown has some significance, but it does not take away from the fact that he is Roman. The clue is in his name, who this person is. Let's look down here. We see the same two letters as we saw on the stone from Oklahoma, written in the Libyan as Haisa, Caesar. Now up here we have a couple more Libyan letters, which is pronounced as Eule. We have the name Eule Haisar, which is Julius Caesar. What you have here on this bust is the bust of Julius Caesar wearing an Egyptian crown. You might ask, why is Julius Caesar wearing an Egyptian crown? Well, if you remember reading in history, Julius Caesar spent an entire year in Egypt after defeating the Pompeian forces in Greece, and he became acquainted and made Cleopatra the queen of Egypt. He spent a year there with her, and they had a son together called Caesarion. Because he made her queen of Egypt, he was also recognized as the pharaoh or king of Egypt by the Ptolemaic people. This, what you see here, is a bust of Julius Caesar. Now find other references and look at other books with his busts, and you will see the similarities of the aquiline nose, the high cheekbone, that stern Roman military look.
Okay, now we're going to bring back an authentic rock tablet from the Burrows cave. We're going to see what it says. If you would please flip the rock. On the back of it, there appears to be some form of lake, river system, stream. And we wonder if it's possible if the script on the other side could tell us what this meant, what this river was.
Now here I took the script from the stone and wrote it out right here exactly as it is on the stone. Now this particular script here, turns out, is written in a snake-like formation. You read it like this line, and it comes down and reads like this, then around here, and it ends right here. This is a very characteristic trait amongst a lot of the ancient scripts. You see it a lot in the Phoenician Aramaic as early as then, and in later scripts. Now for convenience sake, what I've done is, I've written this whole snake-like formation in straight order here, and I've also separated the words, as you can see right here. And I just go over here, and this is exactly how it is read. Once again, looking at this, the script is in the Etruscan script, and the language is an archaic form of Latin, which took me many hours to decipher and fight through, but it gives us exactly where that river is and what it is too, and its importance. Now let me write down a chart. Let me take every single word in the column, write the transliteration and the translation, and then we will put the whole thing together for you.
Okay, now what we're looking at is a word-for-word transliteration from the original ancient script into Latin.
We begin with the first word, and this is a type of a T-A-B-L, tabula. Below here we have a combination of an F and an L, reads as fleos. Here we have Yube with a silent E at the end. We have seen the Yuba before, but Yube. De, Helio. Here we have the FL again, Fluzu. A B, Baetum with the M. Kaylee. Quos. Here we have like a modern G starting again, but which reads Gade. This is the Pata, read as Poto. These letters here are read as Pervunet. Here we have the Fla, Fila, P, Punis. This is a combination of an F and an N. Finikeo. Here we have Et again. And here we name Raumilis. Here we have Effetor and Defludet. This is a form of archaic Latin, but most of the words are identical to the Church Latin, except like the word fleos, we have the word flumen today, fluminis, which is rivers, but back then the word fluxus fleos means flowing water, so they used waterways as the word for rivers. Let's look at the translation here. Tabula, map. Fleos, plural for rivers. Eube, of Yuba. De, by. Helios, flusus, singular, river. Baetos, Baetum is the Baetis, the name of the river. Kaeli means inscribed in rock. Quos, in this case, means on which. Gade, from Gades, a famous city, port city. Poto means powerful. Pervunet means navigated, from the word pervenio. Fila means offshoot or branch, like a genetic branch or offshoot. Punis means Punic. Finikeo means Phoenician. Et means and. Raumilis is the Romulans, which here it seems is the old word for the Romans. They were called the Romulans, not the Romans. Makes perfect sense because Romulus was their founder, so why would they not be called the Romulans? Effetor means crushed, and defludet means they vanished. Now let's put all these words together into the paragraph and get the exact meaning of the script on the rock. Here we have the English translation. It says, Yuba's map of rivers by Helios. On this rock is inscribed the River Baetis, on which the powerful Punic branch of the Phoenicians from Gades navigated and vanished after Romulans crushed them. Now we know the name of the River Baetis, and it also names a city known as Gades. And we have the Romulans, which is the old original name of the Romans, who crushed these Punic branch of the Phoenicians, which were the Carthaginians. Now we have reference to the Second Punic War, which the Romans destroyed the Carthaginians in Spain. And we have the name of the river and the name of a city. Let's take a look as to where that place is.
Once again, we have here a rendition sketched from the back of the rock, and we'll also notice that there are a couple of Roman numerals on this map of the rivers, and we notice a bunch of black dots. Most notably, the first 5 black dots towards the mouth of this river. And we have several boats over here in which appears to be a bay of some sort. And this is the Baetis River. So let's tilt the map at the same angle that the Baetis River is.
Okay.
Okay, now we're looking at the map just as it's tilted. And let's explain a little bit more about this river system here.
This is the map exactly as it looks like on the stone. When you read the script and flip it over, it looks exactly like this. You see a coastline coming down with some ships out there. This designates an ocean. You see the mouth of the river. The main river is right straight through here. That is the Baetis River. The other ones are branches off the Baetis River. This here are roads to settlements. Now we see one branch beginning up here, and it looks like there's a canal connected to another branch. Then there's another major branch coming down, And here where it seems to spread apart, it looks like it's a source of this river here, which signifies high ground or mountainous region. Over here we see another split up of source, which also designate high ground. So we have mountainous region running down this way. Now, let us take a look at the definition Baetis, and let me bring you the map, an ancient map of that place with the River Baetis. Here we find the River Baetis in one of my ancient atlases. Down here we have the port of Gadez, and here is the River Baetis. Notice there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 settlements right here, just like in the rock. The river goes upwards this way, and a branch comes off of it, one of the major branches. This doesn't have all the tributaries, it's just a basic guess of what the rivers look like. Then we have the second major branch going into high mountainous regions down here. Then the river continues up here into more high mountainous regions. So we have, like before I said, the mountainous regions here and down there. Now let us take a look at the dots or the settlements that are along this river. Let's begin at the source. All these little dots and settlements all along down the river, right to the main branch here. Now on the rock here you have a numeral, Roman numeral right on this location here. It does signify something really important. But here you see the source of the second branch, and you come further down here, there's the main branch. Notice all the dots up here, almost like a square formation, looping right down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Major settlements up here, and major settlements all along this river. Numerous dots. Let's take a look at the other map. Back to the coastline, all these dots. All these dots all along here, the settlement here, that quadratic settlement north here on that branch, all up here. The settlement's right at the founding mouth of the river here. And like I said, right where the branch is here, the number, an important event took place. Now we get to see this tributary up here in a more modern map. So where is this River Baetis near the port of Gadez that we have been talking about? This is a map of Roman Spain. The River Baetis and the port of Gadez. Here we have a map of modern southern Spain called Andalusia. The River Baetis in Roman times is now known as the Rio Guadalquivir. It's very interesting to me because I happen to have lived in that area as a child for 6 years. Now let's begin. At the mouth of the river at Jerez de la Frontera. Comes right up to Sevilla. And up here is the first tributary as you see on the map. Right here they built a reservoir that's leading into the Guadalquivir. Up here you see one of the winding rivers. The winding river right up here. And now coming from Cordoba, we see the main branch coming right down and splitting up into Granada. And on this location right here is where you see the Roman numerals. Very interesting. It probably signifies an event that happened there. Coincidentally, there's a town right where those no Roman numerals are called the town of Montilla. It is the site of Julius Caesar's victory over the Pompeian forces at the Battle of Munda. This particular stone can also describe or give reference to the Battle of Munda. Now the river continues up with a few more branches, and it goes into the Sierra Morena, that high ground over here. Down south here in Granada, you have the Sierra Nevada, where that second branch of the river goes into the Guadalquivir. Now what is so important about the stone is that it gives a geographical history of an important river that's really significant to those people. Number one, there was a lot of history to the River Baetis. For once, the Romans fought a really bloody war with the Carthaginians. They had two battles along that river with the Carthaginians around 208 BC. And then at 45 BC, Julius Caesar defeated the Pompeian forces at the Battle of Munda, exactly in that location where the Roman numerals are on that stone. It's very significant because it was also the last battle of Julius Caesar. He was assassinated a year later. So, here we have a description of the River Baetis in Spain on a rock from the Burrows cave. Now, as to one thing that I did notice about a lot of these rocks is they have this strange looking inscription with lines, which a lot of them refer to the Ogham script. I believe it is a catalog number. It is a type of a barcode used back in those days. And I believe that those rocks are keys or like library cards to a major work. You get the introduction, just the title on the rock, and if you want to read more about the history, you match up that index code to the urn with the scroll, and you can read the whole story. This is why it's important that the rocks stay intact and they do not get given away or sold, because we might have some general information on the rocks and can get more historical detail on the scrolls that are inside the cave. So once again, this rock from the Burrows cave is a description of the River Baetis, now known as the Guadalquivir in southern Spain.
Okay, now we're going to discuss the main crypt, because this is the man in the main crypt. And we're going to go back to Russ Burrows' book, to the chapter where he explored the main crypt, and I'm going to paraphrase a couple of quotes. The sarcophagus was located in the center of a very elaborately decorated room. This room was lined in marble slabs, and both the walls and ceiling were beautifully carved. Statues all standing in a row around the room. The huge stone rectangular sarcophagus is about 8 feet in length and something like 3.5 feet wide, and stands maybe 4 feet high. There was the gleam of gold. It was the likeness of a person. Inside, I found decaying cloth. I discovered a death mask. Russ Burrows also stated that there was a golden shield beside the body, and that the shield had a large falcon-type bird carved on it. He also made mention that the cloth was a brownish-red color. Now, Paul, will you read from the book that you've got in your hand over there?
I'm reading. Possession of the king's corpse was a unique symbol of status. There was talk of a Saiva barrier to keep the soldiery quiet, and for 2 years workmen were busied with elaborate plans for the funeral chariot. It was to lie among spices in a golden coffin with a golden lid covered with purple embroidery, on which rested the king's armor and famous Trojan shield. Paintings were attached to mesh netting down either side of the vault. That king with his scepter and his Asian bodyguards. The king with his elephant, his cavalry, his warship, and gold lions guarded the coffin, and a purple banner embroidered with an olive wreath. His back was turned, and Egypt's new satrap Ptolemy befriended the cortege officer in command of the funeral chariot. The chariot set out in secret for Egypt, where Ptolemy came to meet the spoils which would justify his independence. He had stolen a march on rivals who had talked too blandly of Saiva, and instead of sending the coffin into the desert, he displayed it first in Memphis, then finally in Alexandria, where it was still on show to the young Augustus when he visited Egypt 300 years later. It will never be seen again.
We heard that. It will never be seen again. Now back to this rock, the stone from the Burrows cave, the ancestor of Helios. And now let's decipher this script and see who this man is.
Here we have the man, as representation of the bird here. It most probably matches the shield, and this is his breastplate, which indicates that this is the man buried in the main crypt. We will decipher his name. Here we have Ba, S, A, Le, Ke, S, U, Pe, Le, O. Baz, Alex, U, Peleo. Let's look over here to the right. Baz, Alex, U, Peleo, King Alexander of Pella, also known as Alexander the Great. This is the man that lies in the main crypt.
Now with Alexander the Great in the main tomb here, then full knowledge is known of the remaining crypts. Because in the crypt of the Ptolemies, where the body of Alexander was, who else was buried with Alexander and Ptolemy the First?
All the Ptolemies were buried in their crypt in Alexandria. It started with Alexander, who his half-brother Ptolemy stole the body and buried it in Alexandria. Then the Ptolemaic dynasty lasted from 320 to 30 BC, and all the Ptolemies were laid to rest in a crypt at Alexandria on stone beds.
And who was the last person to be buried in the crypt of the Ptolemies?
The last person to be buried was Queen Cleopatra and her two brothers.
So the woman in the Burrows cave is?
The woman in the Burrows cave is Queen Cleopatra. The two children lying beside her are her two brothers, the two Ptolemies, one which was killed at the Battle of the Nile by Julius Caesar, and the other one that was murdered in her palace. Now, for convenience, we have numerical order. I refer to the oldest texts as the most accurate ones. They list 11 Ptolemaic kings and Queen Cleopatra with her two brothers, which makes 12 crypts.
So, Queen Cleopatra's brothers were Ptolemy the 12th and Ptolemy the 13th.
Correct. That is what the oldest sources say. Now, there are a lot of modern books that like to add a lot of Ptolemies and put pretenders in there, but to be correct, there were 11 legitimate male Ptolemies that ruled, and the last one was Queen Cleopatra when she died at 30 BC.
So we have the fact that Russ Burrows has discovered the crypt, the burial crypt of King Alexander the Great with the Ptolemies and Queen Cleopatra, and modern history books accurately record that nothing was ever seen or heard of from any of these bodies or the body of Queen Cleopatra.
Now, we have identified what is in this crypt. Identifying it was not the difficult thing to do. The most difficult thing to do was, how did it get here and why did it get here? Now, first thing we have to take is we have to take all the names of the people that we have and put them together how they are connected. We began with Helios, then we had Yuba, Ptolemy the First. The Ptolemies is the dynasty. We see Greeks, we see Mauritanians, North African Mauritanians, we see Romans mentioned, and we have Caesar mentioned. And then we have the crypt of Alexander the Great with the 12 Ptolemaic kings who disappeared from Alexandria, Egypt, and Russell Burrows found them. Now, What we notice mostly in the cave is we have seen the name Helios and Yuba come up several times. In the main crypt, we have information provided by Yuba, the map of Baetis, and sanctioned and given to by Helios. Now, how does this Yuba, this King Yuba, which is of North African descent, how is he connected with the Ptolemies of Egypt? Here is a map of the ancient Roman world at the time of Augustus. Now here we have Egypt, conquered in 30 BC by Augustus Caesar. He fought a civil war against Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Mark Antony and Cleopatra both committed suicide, and Egypt was annexed to the Roman Empire. It was also the last time that the body of Alexander was viewed by Augustus as well as all the King Ptolemies. They were never ever seen again. Now, let's look at the children of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Now we have to go further into history to find out how this crypt possibly came over here. Let's look at the children of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Now Cleopatra had a son with Julius Caesar called Caesarion. Now he was killed while trying to flee to Ethiopia by Augustus Caesar when Egypt was conquered. There were 3 surviving children of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, which went to Rome and were raised by Augustus Caesar, Octavian's sister, her name Octavia. The name of the 3 children were Cleopatra Selene, which Selene means the moon, Ptolemy Philadelphus, and Alexander Helios. These were the 3 children that were taken to Rome after the fall of Egypt and raised by Octavia. Now history no longer records what happened after the childhood of Ptolemy Philadelphus and Alexander Helios. They just vanished from history. But we know what happened to Cleopatra Selene. Let us now go to Mauritania. Yuba, who we mentioned, is a famous historical figure. His father was Yuba, known as Yuba I of Mauritania, which is the kingdom right here in Morocco, North Africa, where the Garamantes tribe live. His father fought for the Pompeian forces and was defeated at the Battle of Thapsus by Julius Caesar. The young boy Yuba, his son, was taken a hostage to Rome, and he was raised in Rome. As he grew up to be an adult, he fought distinguishedly for Augustus Caesar, and as a reward was granted his ancestral homelands of Mauritania in 25 BC. Now, guess who King Yuba of Mauritania married? He married the daughter of Antony and Cleopatra, Cleopatra Selene. She became the queen of Mauritania. And what happened to the other 2 boys, no one knows. What we know about Yuba was that he was a historian, he traveled a lot, and wrote a history of Egypt, Assyria, Persia, Rome, Greece, and of his own people, the Garamantes Mauritanians. None of his historical works survive to this day.
And historians agree that he wrote many, many volumes of history.
Yes.
Complete digest of history.
Complete digest of history.
And we don't know what happened to his library.
No, we don't. None of his works survive to this day. Now, we have the name Helios, found in the Burrows cave as an important king, and Yuba. The Ptolemaic dynasty, the presence of Greeks, Romans, Mauritanians, and Caesar. Caesar was also the king of Egypt when he stayed there for a year with Cleopatra. He was responsible to putting her on the throne. Therefore, the remnants of the Ptolemaic dynasty would revere him as a king and a god. Now, what about the 2 boys, Alexander Helios and Ptolemy Philadelphus? Well, we know from history that Selene and Yuba had a son known as Ptolemy, but he did not have a titular name like the name Philadelphus, Soter, which means he did not continue the royal line of the Ptolemies. Therefore, it means that the royal line of the Ptolemies was continued in Alexander Helios and or Ptolemy Philadelphus. Were they continuing this lineage of the Ptolemaic dynasty? The first question we have to ask, they apparently ended up in Mauritania with their sister and King Yuba, who is prevalent in Burrows Cave. Now how do we get to Illinois? Is there any ancient historical reference as to Mauritanians knowing about North America?
I'm not going to paraphrase a passage from a book printed in 1834 by Josiah Priest called American Antiquities and Discoveries in the West. I'm going to read paragraph 1 on page 294 of this book, beginning, "The second voyage mentioned by Hornius is given on the authority of Diodorus Siculus, who lived in the time of Julius Caesar, who says that the Phoenicians, having passed the columns of Hercules out of the Mediterranean Sea at the Straits of Gibraltar, and being impelled by the violence of the wind, abandoned themselves to its fury, and after experiencing many tempests, were thrown from an island in the Atlantic Ocean, distant many days' navigation to the westward of the coast of Libya or Africa, which island possessed a fertile soil, had navigable rivers, and there were huge buildings upon it. On their return, by the means of other adventurers, the report of this discovery soon spread among the Carthaginians and Romans, the former being harassed by the wars of the latter, and the people of Mauritania sent a colony to that island with great secrecy, in the event of being overcome by their enemies, they might possess a place of safe retreat." That's on page 294, printed in 1833.
Now, from this account, we have a reference that the Mauritanians had a secret colony across the Atlantic with navigable rivers, which was North America. Now, how did they take advantage of that place and relate it to the history? Well, Cleopatra Selene married the king of Mauritania. She more than likely brought her two brothers along. Her son apparently did not continue the Ptolemaic dynasty, so the dynasty was continued in Alexander Helios or Ptolemy Philadelphus, or both, but there was no record of them after their childhood. Therefore, I conclude that the two boy kings, when they grew up, were sent to the Mauritanian colony over here in America as rulers, and they brought with them the Roman legions, as well as their North African warriors. And also, being the descendants and continuing the line of the Ptolemaic dynasty, they carried out an ancient tradition, which was to take the tomb of their ancestors and all their knowledge with them. Therefore, they took the tomb of the founder, Alexander the Great, and all the Ptolemies with them to North America, as well as much history and information as they could. This is what you see on the stone tablets. Most probably, you have a copy of the Library of Alexandria lying in the cave. These are the thousands of stones, along with the tombs of the Ptolemies with Alexander the Great. Now, I had to do a little research to definitely find, was there any other people that followed a migratory pattern by taking their ancestral crypts with them? Yes, I did find out. A good friend of my father's lived in Saudi Arabia for 20 years, and his hobby and project was to study the royal Saudi Arabian family in the House of Saud. He was able to trace it back all the way to about 100 AD. And he noticed a very peculiar thing that they did. They migrated through Iraq, Syria, all the way down and around the Arabian Peninsula. And on 4 occasions, they made long, faraway migrations. And on each of the 4 occasions, they took their entire ancestral crypts with them to their new home, as well as all the information.
Now we get to explain how everything got here.
Well, here we see a pretty large ship and a Roman-style galley. Number one, it has the front plate here. and it's a large merchant ship with many rowers. Now this particular stone is kind of cramped in and the ship is kind of small, but it clearly shows a square sail, a watchtower, and a square sail with elaborate design is clearly from the Roman era around the time of Christ. And this more likely is a giant cargo ship. Now a lot of these letters are completely scratched out and I'm just guessing at a few of the script, but up at the top here, now we do have up here in the script a patale, and here it looks like a phila, and it ends, which could be short for Ptolemy Philadelphus, and here we have the Gade, the city of Gades mentioned again. And here we have the word Patevi, which means journey. These are a few words I've been able to make out. Other letters are relatively faded, but mainly this ship here, let's go back and look at it. This is of a merchant class vessel. This is a transport ship. This is how they got over here, and this is how they brought the large quantities of cut marble, which marble was mined in Sicily that time. The marble engravings of the tomb, the coffins, and everything, they were boarded on these giant transport ships. Now we also have a picture of a warship.
Now back to an authentic Burrows Cave tablet.
Now here, in the last picture, we saw a merchant class vessel. Here we see a war galley. What distinguishes is this part right here. This is also the front neck here is a metallic ramming rod. This particular ship was used for warfare and for ramming, whereas the ship previously was a merchant class ship. Now up here, very interestingly, you see the letters Caesar, Caesar. This could be either a North African Mauritanian ship flying under the with Roman flag colors, or this stone could be depicting history or a naval battle involving Julius Caesar several years earlier. We have yet to find out because I'm starting to decipher the script only right now. Now, we know what kind of ships they used now. Now let's look at a river-style boat. Now here we have a river boat transporting what looks like a stone block. Could it be one of the marble beds that we see in the cave, or perhaps the sarcophagus? Now we also see the moon and the sun, and here we see 7 dots. That can either mean a number or date, or even the bigger Little Dipper.
In conclusion, what we have is the tomb of Alexander the Great, all the Ptolemaic dynasty, Queen Cleopatra, and the library and historical record of Yuba.
And they all migrated here via Mauritania, and they are still there today. And it'll be very interesting to look through the archives, because lots of lost history can be recovered.
The rest of the story, so to speak, is all right there in that cave. And as far as the time date of this happening and when this took place, you're looking at anywhere of 10 to 15 BC to probably 10 to 15 AD. It's anywhere in that time frame, that 30-year span, or the same 40-year span or 50-year span, gives us an accurate time era of when all this happened. Now we're going to show you some more decipherments from the cave, different tablets. Here's one here. Aletis Tiba, flute player, Ptolemy the 11th. This is Cleopatra's father. Here we have a good Marcus Antonius, Mark Anthony. And here you'll see the Helios at the top. This is Helios at age 22. And next to Helios is Lucia, light married to Helios, the wife of Helios. Here once again is a very famous historical character. Is Burrows of Burrows, king of the Molossians. And next to him, we have a Hellenic soothsayer. Another rock from the cave. You'll notice what appears at first to be a menorah in the bottom, but actually we all know that this is a constellation insignia of the sun with the surrounding planets. We have found no Jewish or Judean script in this cave or anything having to do with such. Utaviz. And we have another rock with Utaviz scripted on it. We wonder if this is Octavian. This stone is probably one of the most famous stones taken from the Burrows cave. It's called the elephant stela. And actually there have been a couple of them taken from the Burrows cave. Here's another one. These two stones are owned by different people. And what it translates to is the Punic elephant is abundant where it is humid. Now what gave a lot of the Latin scholars a problem was the fact that they could not find the word elephant on the stela. But Shafranca has figured out that the LC, the Luca is a Roman term for elephant. And it's in virtually any scholarly Latin dictionary. This is when Burrows, who we saw earlier, brought elephants through Lucania to besiege the Romans. Once again, this is one of the more famous tablets taken from the Burrows cave. This stone has this bird carved on the rear of it, and the other side, this script, and this is a chicken. And it says, "Here lies the sacrifice." This tablet is what we call a ritual stone or a death stone. This is the side with script. And the other side has what appears to be some type of foot up here, and right here you can vaguely make out a snake. And this stone says, "For my son, who is blind in body, peace be with you. I sadly placed this stone." We believe this little boy was bit by a snake and died from that bite. This is another historical stone from the cave, and its translation is, "The handsome white Helios, defined as the righteous one by the people, and also the possessor of the Hellenic kings." When people ask us, how do we know who's in the tomb, we try to explain to them that we are reading it off of the stones. But no one believes us. Sling stone. This stone right here is a typical sling stone for that era, and it says, "To finish you." This stone, as you will notice, has a decoloration on the bottom of it, which is actually paint. This stone has got paint on it. And it's another ritual stone. And its translation is a ritual from Tarabulis, which is modern-day Tripoli, where a fat cow was thrown into flames and people's contact with the smoke represented unity with Tanith. Here we have another very interesting stone, probably one of the most interesting that we've seen so far. The eye at the bottom would indicate that this is an observation stone, and this stone is translated as a basket-like object magnificently comes and goes in a swift-like motion, and on its base can be observed many red lights twisted together. Well, reading that, what would you think would be on the reverse side of this stone? This appears to be some type of flying ship with flames coming out from underneath it. And this stone, when translated, on this side says, "In the likeness of a monster that constantly glows, where its armor is made of bronze." And then there's a small picture of what the ship looks like. Very interesting thing, in the top corner here, we have what appears to be the signature of Yuba. Is it possible that King Yuba of Mauritania actually carved this particular stone? The script on it is absolutely flawless. I'm going to take a moment to show you more stones from this cave, or this tomb, the tomb of Alexander the Great. We have not deciphered these yet. The script appears to be in pretty rough shape. This is the reverse of the same stone. The series of lines, of course, are an index reference. The American scholars are trying to read them as words, and they are calling them Ogham script, which does not exist in North America. This stone here is covered with what the American scholars consider to be Ogham script. But it has absolutely nothing to do with Ogham. It appears to be a reference index. This is another tablet we're currently working on. And then we have what appears to be the reverse side of another ritual stone, depicting what appears to be a chicken in the corner on top of a snake. This stone describes an ancient Middle Eastern city called Tabur. The script is very fine on it. This tablet here appears to be a hawk, bird of some sort. It has the index script on it, and it has not been deciphered. Now we're going to show you our collection of stones from this tomb. This is one of the famous stones used in the video and used in several books. It's now in our possession. As you can see, some idiot has dropped it and broken it since it's been printed before. This is it is Julius Caesar wearing the Egyptian uraeus. Beautiful stone. This is also a stone taken from the Lazeria collection. It is somewhat similar to the Bas-Alexandre stone shown previously, because Alexander mimicked and tried to pattern himself after King Achilles the Viper. This is King Achilles the Viper. Bas-Équerre de Perro. This stone is the Baetis River stone shown earlier. We wanted you to look again at the actual rock. Also, if you would please turn the rock over. Showing the river. This stone is in our collection. This is another science stone from the Lazeria collection. You'll notice on the right there is the index reference. At the bottom is the whale, and the whale appears to be smiling. On the reverse of this stone is what appears to be a Roman warship with a battering ram. Or this vessel could have been used in whaling. Now we're going to show you what the script on the other side translates as. This stone says, "I am revealing an argument which I will make understandable. I affirm that presently not only do whales make sounds when mating, but will occasionally approach the shore, ending their travels." Some of the scholarly books written about this tomb explain how geologists from separate American universities have attempted to explain this strange bluish-gray black stone that these tablets are carved on. Some of them have a light brown color, some of them have a dark brown color, some of them have a dark green fringe on them. It is somewhat soft on the surface, yet hard underneath, and it appears to be layered in a type of strata. Geologists have said that this stone came from some type of volcanic action and became heated up, compacted silt, more than likely from a volcano. No one has been able to determine where these stones have come from. So now, what we have done is we have found the stone. This is a stone similar to the Burrows cave stones, except you will notice it has no script on it. We have done an acid test with our stone, and it is identical to the reactions on this rock right here. We also did a specific gravity test with this stone, and it was exactly the same as the Burrows cave stones. We have not told anyone where these stones have come from until now. If we follow back the Etruscan heritage, we will find that this stone comes from a pit in Italy. The geologists in the top universities of North America cannot find this stone anywhere in North America, and have said that it is not native to North America, and they have no idea where it's from. But this stone comes from Italy, a little town known as Lavagna, which is famous for its chalkboards. And this black stone, Lavagna, has also been used for centuries to tile the roofs of homes and houses, places of business. And there is evidence to indicate that there are also buildings actually made out of Lavagna. All the indicative markings and extra materials found in the Burrows cave are found in the Lavagna pit. Pyrite specks in some of the Burrows cave stones, along with many different fossils. As the volcano erupted and spewed its silt molten mud into the lake at the Lavagna pit, it cooled at different temperatures for different periods of time, and then was pushed above ground. And in Lavagna is where all of the stones and the tablets from the Burrows cave come from. This is taken from a scholarly book by Dr. Covey, Senior Professor of History at Wake Forest. And to give you some idea of how the scholars were treating the Burrows cave, you will see here Cleopatra, the last Greek monarch of Hellenistic Egypt. Right underneath it, Burrows stone. Egyptian, Egyptians, non-Egyptians, Assyrian, Sudanese, Persian, Ptolemaic, Roman, Byzantine, and Arab dominations. If preservers of hybrid late Egyptian style would have spoken an Asiatic language, we ought to have pretty much the Burrows stone results. Isn't that exactly what we have? Moving farther down, Dr. Covey. This was written several years ago when he did not know who was in the cave. Egyptian, Middle East, Asia Minor. Look right here, Carthage, Mediterranean, Egyptians, Numidians, Etruscans, Greeks. Next line down, Burrows cave. Phoenicians, Libyans, Carthage, Burrows cave. Burrows cave, Carthaginian Empire. So we can see that scholars for years have speculated that the Burrows cave had something to do with something over there. The photograph is printed on the back of the epigraphic journal printed in North America of the Burrows tomb. Now what we have to do is forget that there's a bunch of Indians around it, but this is what the guy that found the cave said depicted the main crypt with the sarcophagus better than any other picture. So we can see that the artist has thrown a lot of Indians in without really any uniformity to their dress. But now we will notice the sarcophagus. And right there in front of the sarcophagus is the great famous Trojan shield with the sword of Alexander. In these urns, laying against the marble crypt, are vases full of scrolls. Inside this main crypt, Mr. Burrows has said that there are gold statues completely surrounding it. If you are wondering, perhaps, where this tomb of Alexander the Great, with all the Ptolemies, the bodies of Cleopatra, her two brothers, if you're wondering where it's located at, it is located in southern Illinois, along the Skillet Fork River. Our best sources say that it is approximately 1.5 to 2 miles away from the river on the west side, south of Highway 50. The state of Illinois passed a law in 1990 stating that any burial tomb becomes the property of the state and they are removed, the bodies are removed, which is what we do not want. We have reason to suspect that a large portion of the tomb's treasure has been plundered. A very interesting note is how the 5 largest D-color African diamonds in the world have all come from North America. And these have all recently surfaced since 1985. How come no one in the diamond industry questioned this? We have cause to suspect that these diamonds came from this tomb. Could these diamonds have been diamonds that were given to Alexander the Great by the Queen of Meroe back in 332 BC?
Good, wasn't it? Very good, actually. One of the best decipherment tapes in the world. Paul Kelly, Shafranka. And at the beginning it said Shafranka and Horatio. Horatio is me. Horatio is where Harry comes from, if you didn't already know that. So that is a wrap, as amazing as it is. And that really set us apart, put us on the map of history, epigraphy, and in the Burrows cave corner, which we always maintained was the lost tomb of Alexander the Great, the entire Ptolemaic dynasty, including Queen of Queens Cleopatra, right over that hill over there. And still, to this day, no one has found them anywhere else. And there's been 19 pseudo sites of Alexander and Cleopatra. 19. And none of them turned out to have any meat or anything with them. Just all turned out to be fraud. So there's one for the history books. Thank you, always, and keep Paul in your prayers.